You wake up, and the first thought that arrives is not about what you need to do today, but about how badly you want to not be here. Not in a dramatic way, not with any grand gesture or permanent exit, but just this deep, bone-tired longing to step out of your life entirely. To cancel everything, to turn off your phone, close the door, and simply cease to exist in the eyes of everyone who knows you. You have been carrying this desire for weeks now, maybe months, and every morning it gets a little heavier. The weight of having to show up, to respond, to be present, to maintain the performance of being a functional person in the world. And here is what makes it worse. You have been telling yourself that this feeling means something is fundamentally broken in you, that wanting to disappear is laziness, that it is avoidance, that it is a moral failing, a weakness of character, a refusal to adult properly in a world that demands your participation. You look at other people who seem to manage their lives with grace, who answer their emails promptly and show up to things with energy, and you wonder what is wrong with you that you cannot muster even the most basic enthusiasm for existence. You have tried to push through it. You have given yourself stern talks about responsibility and commitment. You have forced yourself to go through the motions, hoping the feeling would pass, hoping you would snap out of it. But it has not passed. If anything, it has intensified. The gap between what you think you should feel and what you actually feel has become a chasm you can no longer pretend does not exist. And the judgment you direct at yourself for feeling this way, that judgment is perhaps the heaviest part of all. What I want to offer you today is not a cure for this feeling, but a complete reframing of what it means. Because what if I told you that your desire to disappear is not laziness at all? What if this longing to retreat, to vanish, to step away from the relentless demands of life is actually a form of clarity? Not confusion, not weakness, not moral failure, but a kind of seeing that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. This is not about romanticizing withdrawal or suggesting that isolation is the answer to all of life's difficulties. It is about understanding that there is an intelligence in your exhaustion, a wisdom in your desire to step back, and that perhaps what you are experiencing is not a breakdown, but a breakthrough into a more honest relationship with existence itself. The question is not how to fix yourself so you can get back to participating in a life that is draining you. The question is what your desire to disappear is trying to show you about the life you have been living. Let us start with what this feeling actually is. The desire to disappear, to retreat, to become invisible to the world. It arises when there is a fundamental misalignment between your inner experience and the outer performance you have been maintaining. You have been showing up to a version of life that no longer fits, if it ever did. You have been inhabiting roles, fulfilling obligations, meeting expectations, and somewhere along the way, the person performing all these functions stopped bearing any resemblance to the person you actually are. This is not about laziness. Lazy people do not wake up exhausted from the effort of existing. Lazy people are not consumed by guilt about their inability to muster enthusiasm for things that should matter. What you are experiencing is the exhaustion that comes from living at a distance from yourself, from maintaining a self that is increasingly untenable, from pretending that everything is fine when nothing feels fine at all. Think about what it takes to show up in the world, not just physically, but the energetic and emotional labor of being present. You must organize your face into appropriate expressions. You must modulate your voice to convey interest, engagement, enthusiasm you may not feel. You must track conversational threads, remember details about other people's lives, offer responses that demonstrate care and attention. You must move through space in ways that signal you are okay, that you are managing, that you are a person who has it together. This performance is exhausting even when it aligns with genuine feeling. When it does not, when you are performing a version of yourself that feels increasingly alien, the cost becomes unbearable. The desire to disappear is not a rejection of life itself. It is a rejection of this particular construction of life, this specific way of being in the world that has become unsustainable. Hannah Arendt wrote extensively about the human condition, about what it means to live as a being capable of action and thought in a world shared with others. She understood that we do not simply exist in the world, but that we appear in it, that we make ourselves visible through speech and action. But here is what she also understood, that this appearance, This showing up in the public realm carries with it tremendous weight. To appear is to expose yourself to judgment, to interpretation, to the gaze of others who will decide what your actions mean. To be visible is to be vulnerable, and there comes a point where the cost of maintaining this visibility, of sustaining this appearance, becomes too high. What you are feeling is the burden of what Arendt might call the space of appearance, collapsing under its own weight. You have been holding yourself in view for so long, performing your existence for an audience you may not even care about, and your entire system is now demanding rest. But here is where we must look more carefully, because the desire to disappear is being confused with escape, and these are not the same thing. Escape is running from something you do not want to face. Escape is avoidance, denial, the attempt to outrun reality. What you're experiencing is not escape, but the need for what we might call conscious withdrawal. It is the recognition that you have been living in a way that violates something essential in you, and that continuing to do so will eventually destroy whatever remains. This is not weakness. This is self-preservation manifesting as clarity. Your system knows, even if your conscious mind has not yet caught up, that you cannot continue as you have been. The desire to disappear is your psyche's way of saying stop, step back. Something needs to change, and it cannot change while you are still maintaining the performance. Consider for a moment what happens when you actually do disappear, even temporarily. When you cancel plans, turn off your phone, retreat into solitude, there is often an immediate sense of relief, is there not? A lifting of pressure, a dropping of the mask, a return to something more fundamental. In those moments of withdrawal, you are not escaping life, but returning to yourself. You are stepping out of the constructed identity you have been maintaining and inhabiting something closer to your actual experience. This is what Arendt understood about the vita contemplativa, the contemplative life, as opposed to the vita activa, the active life. Both are necessary, both are part of being human. But our culture has so thoroughly valorized action, productivity, constant engagement, that we have forgotten the necessity of withdrawal, of solitude, of the space to think and feel without performing. The judgment you direct at yourself for wanting to disappear, that judgment is not coming from you. It is coming from a cultural narrative that equates worth with productivity, that measures value by visibility, that insists you must always be available, always responsive, always on. This narrative has so thoroughly colonized your thinking that you have internalized it as truth. You believe that wanting rest is laziness, that needing space is selfishness, that stepping back is failure. But what if these beliefs are not truths about human nature, but constructions designed to keep you participating in systems that profit from your exhaustion? What if the real laziness is not questioning these demands, not examining whether the life you have been living is actually sustainable or meaningful? If this perspective is opening something up for you, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would love to have you along for the journey. Now let us go deeper into what this clarity actually reveals. When you want to disappear, when you fantasize about vanishing from your life, you are not fantasizing about dying. You are fantasizing about being released from a particular construction of self, a particular set of obligations, a particular way of being in the world. And this fantasy is informative. It is telling you something crucial about the mismatch between how you are living and what you actually need. The question is not how to make yourself want to participate in this life again. The question is what needs to change so that your life becomes something you do not need to escape from. Because here is the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. If you are constantly wanting to disappear from your life is probably not structured in a way that honors who you actually are. Think about the obligations you carry. How many of them did you actually choose? How many emerged from genuine desire versus external pressure, social expectation, the need to appear normal or successful or responsible? You may find, if you look honestly, that much of what fills your days bears little resemblance to what you actually care about. You have been living according to a script you never wrote, showing up to roles you never auditioned for, maintaining relationships that drain you, pursuing goals that mean nothing to you. And all of this takes energy, enormous amounts of energy that must be generated from somewhere inside you. Is it any wonder you are exhausted? Is it any wonder you want to step away from the entire enterprise? I know many of you watching this have never told anyone what you are really experiencing. You have been carrying this alone, maybe for years, thinking something is fundamentally wrong with you. But here is what I want you to understand. The moment you name this, the moment you acknowledge it out loud, even just in a comment, something shifts. You stop being alone with it. So let me ask you directly, how long have you been feeling this way? When did you first notice that the life you were living no longer felt like yours? I want you to share in the comments, not because I need engagement, but because someone else watching this needs to see your words. They need to know they are not the only one. And if you cannot find the words right now, if it feels too heavy to articulate, just type this: I have been here too. That is it. Just those 4 words. Because when you do, you create permission for dozens of others to say it too. Your honesty, your willingness to be seen in your struggle, it helps break the silence that keeps all of us isolated. So comment below. Tell me where you are in this. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in what you are feeling. What we are talking about here is what Arendt might call the banality of seeking, the unexamined pattern of continuously striving for more, better, different, without ever stopping to ask whether the direction itself makes sense. Most people spend their entire lives caught in this pattern. They feel dissatisfied, so they pursue new goals. They feel empty, so they acquire new things. They feel disconnected, so they seek new relationships. But they never stop to examine whether the fundamental way they are relating to existence might be the problem. The desire to disappear is your system's way of forcing you to stop, to step out of the cycle, to create enough distance that you can actually see what you have been doing. This is not laziness, this is the beginning of wisdom. Consider what happens when you actually do withdraw, when you give yourself permission to not show up, to not perform, to not maintain the facade. At first there may be guilt, the voices in your head telling you that you are being irresponsible, that people are counting on you, that you should be able to handle this. But if you can sit with that guilt without acting on it, if you can let it be there without letting it drive you back into performance, something else begins to emerge. Clarity, space, the ability to feel what you actually feel rather than what you think you should feel. And in that space, you begin to see more clearly what has been consuming your energy, what has been draining you, what has been keeping you at a distance from yourself. This is where the real work begins. Because once you see clearly, once you understand what has been happening, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to unconscious participation in a life that does not fit. You are faced with a choice. Perhaps for the first time in a long time, do you continue to maintain what you have built, even though it costs you everything? Or do you begin the difficult work of dismantling what no longer serves, of saying no to obligations that drain you, of disappointing people who have come to expect a version of you that you can no longer sustain? This is not an easy choice. There is no path here that does not involve discomfort. But there is a difference between the discomfort of growth and the exhaustion of maintaining an unsustainable performance. One leads somewhere, the other just grinds you down. The clarity that emerges from wanting to disappear is the clarity of seeing through the constructions you have been living within. You begin to see how much of your life has been organized around avoiding discomfort, meeting expectations, securing approval, maintaining an image. You begin to see how little space has been given to what you actually need, what actually nourishes you, what actually feels true. And this seeing is uncomfortable because it reveals the gap between the life you have built and the life that might actually sustain you. But this discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something is right, that your capacity for honesty is still intact, that you have not yet been completely numbed to the mismatch between your inner and outer experience. What would it look like to honor this desire to disappear rather than fight it? Not to disappear permanently, not to abandon all responsibility or connection, but to create genuine space for withdrawal, for rest, for the kind of solitude that allows you to hear yourself think. This might mean saying no to things you have always said yes to. It might mean disappointing people who have come to depend on your constant availability. It might mean accepting that you cannot be everything to everyone, that you cannot maintain the performance indefinitely, that something has to give. And what has to give is not your well-being, but the demands that have been placed upon it. There is a particular kind of courage required to withdraw when the world insists you show up, to say no when yes is expected, to prioritize your inner life when everyone around you is focused on external achievement. This is not the courage of dramatic action or bold proclamation. It is the quiet courage of knowing what you need and choosing it even when it disappoints others. Arendt understood that true freedom emerges not from unlimited possibility, but from understanding necessity, from seeing clearly what is actually required and choosing it consciously, rather than being driven by forces you have not examined. The necessity you are experiencing is the need to stop, to create space, to step back from a life that has become untenable. Honoring this necessity is not weakness. It is the beginning of living with greater integrity. But here is what you must understand. Withdrawal is not the end goal, it is a means to something else. You do not disappear in order to stay disappeared. You disappear in order to return to yourself, to remember what matters, to reconnect with what has been buried under the weight of obligation and performance. The solitude, the space, the stepping back, these create the conditions for something new to emerge. Not a return to how things were, but a movement towards something more aligned with who you actually are. This is what Arendt meant by natality, the human capacity for new beginnings, for bringing something into the world that was not there before. But new beginnings require space. They cannot emerge in the midst of constant activity, constant noise, constant demands on your attention. They require the kind of emptiness that our culture has taught you to fear. What most people fear about withdrawal is that if they stop performing, if they stop maintaining the facade, they will discover there is nothing underneath. That the self they have been presenting is the only self there is, and without it, they are empty, worthless, nothing. But this fear is based on a misunderstanding of what the self actually is. You are not the performance. You are not the roles you play or the obligations you fulfill. These are constructions, useful perhaps, but not fundamental. What remains when you strip away the performance is not nothing but something more essential, more real, more capable of genuine action and genuine connection. The desire to disappear is actually a desire to discover what lies beneath the constructed self, to meet yourself without mediation, without the constant need to prove or perform or protect. This is the paradox at the heart of what you are experiencing. You want to disappear because you are exhausted from being visible in ways that do not reflect who you are. But what you are actually seeking is not invisibility, but a different kind of visibility, one based on truth rather than performance. You want to be seen, but you want to be seen as you actually are, not as you think you should be or as others expect you to be. And that kind of visibility requires first the courage to step back, to stop performing, to create enough distance that you can begin to distinguish between the constructed self and something more fundamental. Let me be clear about something. I am not suggesting that all obligations are meaningless or that you should abandon all responsibility. Life in the world with others necessarily involves commitment, care, showing up for people and things that matter. But there is a difference between obligations that arise from genuine care and connection and obligations that arise from fear, from the need to maintain an image, from the inability to disappoint. The first kind of obligation, though it requires energy, also nourishes something in you. The second kind only drains, and if you are honest, you probably know which obligations in your life fall into which category. The desire to disappear is often most intense when your life is filled with the second kind, when you are constantly giving energy to things that give nothing back, when you are maintaining connections that feel hollow, when you are pursuing goals that mean nothing to you. The work of honoring your desire to disappear, then, is the work of discernment, of learning to distinguish between what actually matters and what you have been told should matter, between genuine connection and performed relationship, between meaningful action and busy work, between showing up from a place of wholeness and showing up from a place of depletion. This discernment cannot happen in the midst of constant activity. It requires the space that withdrawal provides, the silence that allows you to hear your own voice, rather than the voices of expectation and obligation. If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been feeling, something you have not quite been able to name, then I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us exploring these questions, sitting with these uncomfortable truths, learning to see in new ways. I create these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who are not satisfied with surface answers, who want to understand rather than just feel better temporarily. If that is you, consider subscribing. Not because you need another channel to follow, but because this journey of understanding yourself, of waking up to what is real, it helps to have companions along the way. People who will not offer you easy fixes, but will sit with you in the questions. I will be here every week with another exploration, another perspective, another thread to pull on, and I would be honored to have you here as part of this community of seekers and thinkers. So if this feels right, hit that subscribe button. And if you found value in this particular exploration, let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. Your reflections often illuminate things I had not considered. Now let us return to the question of clarity. Why does wanting to disappear represent clarity rather than confusion? Because it is your system's way of communicating something your conscious mind may not yet fully grasp. That the way you have been living is not sustainable. That something fundamental needs to change. That you cannot continue to maintain the performance without serious cost to your well-being. This is information. This is data about the mismatch between your inner experience and outer expression. And rather than pathologizing this information, rather than treating it as a symptom to be eliminated, what if you treated it as intelligence to be honored? Think about other signals your body sends you. When you are hungry, you do not berate yourself for needing food. When you are tired, you do not call yourself lazy for needing sleep. These are recognized as basic human needs, information about what your system requires to function. But somehow, when your psyche signals that it needs rest from performance, needs space from constant demands, needs relief from the exhaustion of maintaining an unsustainable identity, this is treated as a character flaw rather than essential information. Why? Because we have been taught that psychological and emotional needs are less legitimate than physical ones, that the inner life is optional while the outer life is mandatory, that showing up in the world takes precedence over showing up for yourself. But this hierarchy is backwards. You cannot show up authentically in the world if you have no connection to your inner experience. You cannot give genuinely if you are constantly depleted. You cannot maintain meaningful relationships if you are performing rather than being present. The desire to disappear is your system's way of trying to restore balance, to protect what is most essential in you from being completely consumed by external demands. This is not pathology. This is health attempting to reassert itself in a life that has become unbalanced. What becomes possible when you stop fighting this desire and start listening to it? First, you create space to examine your life with honesty. You can begin to ask uncomfortable questions. Which of these obligations actually serve my well-being? Which relationships nourish me and which drain me? What am I pursuing because I genuinely want it versus because I think I should want it? What would change if I gave myself permission to want something different than what I have been taught to want? These questions cannot be answered while you are in the midst of constant performance. They require the distance that withdrawal provides. Second, you begin to develop a different relationship with solitude. Rather than treating it as something to be feared or avoided, you recognize it as necessary space, as the condition for clarity, as the place where you can actually hear yourself think. Solitude stops being loneliness and becomes sanctuary. This shift is crucial because as long as you fear solitude, you will continue to fill your life with activity and connection, even when these things drain you. You will stay in situations that do not serve you because the alternative, being alone with yourself, feels too threatening. But when solitude becomes a resource rather than a threat, when you discover that you are actually okay in your own company, you stop needing to maintain relationships and activities out of fear. You can choose connection when it is genuine and step back when it is not. Third, you develop what we might call conscious presence, as opposed to performed presence. You learn the difference between showing up because you genuinely want to be somewhere and showing up because you feel you should. The first kind of presence is energizing even when it requires effort. The second kind is exhausting because it requires you to be someone you are not. When you honor your desire to disappear, when you give yourself permission to withdraw from situations that require performed presence, you create more capacity for genuine presence. You can show up more fully in the places and relationships that actually matter, because you are not constantly depleted from maintaining a facade everywhere else. And here is what may be most important. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to trust that your desires, your needs, your sense of what is right for you, these are valid even when they contradict external expectations. You begin to trust that you know what you need better than anyone else does, that your exhaustion is real information rather than weakness, that your longing for space and rest and withdrawal is wisdom rather than failure. This trust is revolutionary in a culture that constantly tells you to override your own knowing, to push through your limits, to ignore the signals your system sends in favor of what others expect from you. But let me be honest about something. Honoring your desire to disappear will likely disappoint people. There will be those who have come to depend on your constant availability, your willingness to show up, your maintenance of the performance. When you begin to say no, when you begin to create boundaries, when you begin to prioritize your own well-being over their expectations, they may not understand. They may call you selfish. They may accuse you of abandoning your responsibilities. They may question what is wrong with you. And this will hurt. It will be tempting to return to the performance, to prove that you are not what they accuse you of being. But here is what you must understand. People who cannot tolerate your boundaries, who cannot respect your need for space, who insist that you maintain a version of yourself that exhausts you, these people are invested in your performance, not in your well-being. Their disappointment is not evidence that you are wrong, but evidence that you have been living in service of their needs rather than your own. This does not mean you become callous or uncaring. It does not mean you abandon all responsibility or connection. It means you begin to distinguish between genuine care and performed care, between relationships that are reciprocal and relationships that are extractive, between showing up from wholeness and showing up from depletion. And you begin to organize your life accordingly. This reorganization is not easy. It requires difficult conversations. It requires letting go of identities you have held, roles you have played, ways of being in the world that no longer fit. But the alternative is to continue as you have been, to keep performing until there is nothing left, to disappear not consciously, but through complete depletion. So what does clarity actually look like in practice? It looks like being honest about what you can and cannot do. It looks like saying no without lengthy explanations or apologies. It looks like creating space in your schedule for rest and solitude without feeling guilty about it. It looks like letting some relationships fade rather than forcing connection that feels hollow. It looks like pursuing what actually interests you rather than what you think should interest you. It looks like accepting that you cannot be everything to everyone and choosing consciously where to direct your limited energy. None of this is dramatic. None of this is revolutionary in the conventional sense. But in a culture that demands constant performance, constant productivity, constant availability, simply choosing to honor your own needs is a radical act. And here is what you may discover. When you stop performing, when you step back from obligations that drain you, when you create genuine space for yourself, you do not disappear. You become more present, not less. You become more capable of genuine connection, not less. You become more able to act from clarity and purpose rather than from exhaustion and obligation. The self that emerges from conscious withdrawal is more solid, more real, more capable of meaningful engagement than the performed self ever was. Because it is not based on maintaining an image, but on knowing who you are and what you need. It is not based on meeting external expectations, but on living with integrity. It is not based on constant activity, but on choosing action that matters from a place of rest rather than depletion. This is what Hannah Arendt understood about the human condition, that we need both action and contemplation, both engagement and withdrawal, both the public realm where we appear to others, and the private realm where we can be alone with ourselves. Our culture has so overvalued the first half of these pairs that we have forgotten the necessity of the second. We have forgotten that meaningful action emerges from space, that genuine connection requires solitude, that you cannot appear authentically in the world if you have no connection to who you are when no one is watching. The desire to disappear is a longing for this private realm, this space apart, this necessary distance that allows you to return to yourself. So return to where we began. You wake up wanting to disappear, and you have been judging yourself harshly for this desire. But what if this desire is not weakness but wisdom? What if it is not laziness but clarity? What if your system knows something your conscious mind has not yet fully grasped, that the life you have been living is not sustainable, that something fundamental needs to change, that you cannot continue as you have been? What if honoring this desire, creating space for genuine withdrawal, is not escape, but the beginning of living with greater integrity and authenticity? What if the answer to your exhaustion is not to try harder to maintain the performance, but to question why the performance is required in the first place? You do not need to disappear permanently. You do not need to abandon all responsibility or connection. But you do need to create genuine space to examine your life, to distinguish between what actually matters and what you have been told should matter, to discover who you are when you are not performing for anyone. This space, this withdrawal, this conscious stepping back, it is not the end but the beginning. It is the place from which genuine action emerges, the ground from which authentic presence grows, the silence in which you can finally hear what you have been trying to tell yourself all along. Your desire to disappear is clarity. Listen to it, honor it, let it show you what needs to change, and trust that what emerges from that space will be more real, more solid, more capable of genuine engagement than anything you could maintain through force of will alone. The answer was always there, in your exhaustion, in your longing, in your desire to step back. You just needed permission to see it not as failure, but as the beginning of something true.